Hey everyone, my name is Jakob. I'm currently a third-year PhD student at Karlsruhe Institute of Technology in Germany, and I'm presenting joint work with my colleagues Niklas and Yvette on the effects of explanations on perceptions of informational fairness and trustworthiness in automated decision-making. Automated decision-making is pervasive, but there's several examples known where such systems are having undesirable effects on people. For instance, in the realm of hiring, grading, or the well-known example of recidivism prediction. There are two main problems of such automated decision systems that are commonly addressed in the literature: their opaqueness and their unfairness. Fairness is a multifaceted construct, though. According to the organizational justice literature, it can be broken down into 4 dimensions. The first dimension is procedural fairness, which is regarding procedures used by a decision maker, or in our case, an automated decision system. The second one is distributive fairness, regarding the distribution of outcomes. The third dimension is interpersonal fairness, regarding the interactions between a decision maker and a decision subject. I've grayed this one out because it's not readily applicable to the automated decision system case. The fourth dimension is informational fairness, which is regarding the explanations of a decision maker. Prior work has to a good deal focused on procedural and distributive fairness of automated decision systems, whereas the focus of our work is on the informational fairness dimension. More concretely, in this work, we conduct a scenario-based randomized experiment in the realm of automated lending, and we focus on the effects of combinations of explanations on people's perceptions of informational fairness and trustworthiness, and the interplay of these two constructs. In line with previous work, we define a system to be informationally fair if it conveys adequate information on an explanation of the decision-making process and its outcomes. And we define trustworthiness as a well-established construct as the perception of confidence in the reliability and integrity of an automated decision system. We treat these concepts as latent constructs and use pre-established items from the psychology discipline measured on 5-point Likert scales. Based on a publicly available data set on automated lending, we introduce our study participants to the scenario in the following way. A finance company offers loans on real estate in urban, semi-urban, and rural areas. A potential customer first applies online for a specific loan, and afterwards the company assesses the customer's eligibility for that loan. An individual applied online for a loan at this company. The company denied the loan application. The decision to deny the loan was communicated to the applying individual electronically and in a timely fashion. Based on this publicly available data set, we then train a supervised machine learning model to make predictions on a holdout set to instantiate this automated decision system, as well as to generate explanations. Study participants are then randomly assigned to one of 4 between subject conditions, the first one being our baseline condition that does not involve any information or explanation whatsoever. The second condition being the features condition, where people are shown the features that were used in the decision. The third condition reveals the features as well as how important they are in the decision-making process. And our fourth condition reveals features, their importance, and counterfactual scenarios. Note that from top to bottom, the amount of information that our conditions reveal increases, meaning that each consecutive explanation reveals the exact same information as the previous one, plus additional information. Our study participants are shown 2 randomly selected applicants that were denied their loan application and are asked their perceptions of informational fairness and trustworthiness. With this study, we aim to address the following questions. Question 1. How does the amount of provided information affect perceptions of informational fairness? Question 2. How does the amount of provided information affect perceptions of trustworthiness? Question 3, how do perceptions of informational fairness and trustworthiness relate to one another? And finally, question 4, how does people's self-reported AI literacy affect their perceptions? This is an overview of study participants' responses to our questions on informational fairness and trustworthiness, where informational fairness is depicted in blue and trustworthiness is orange. Note that the conditions here are ordered such that the amount of information increases clockwise from top left to bottom left. It's interesting to see that as we increase the amount of information, people's informational fairness perceptions increase, perhaps a little surprisingly, but also their perceptions of trustworthiness increase. We also tested differences for statistical significance by conducting Kuehl-Valles H-tests and as well as Bonferroni-corrected Mann-Whitney U tests for pairwise comparison. For informational fairness, we see that providing feature importances and counterfactual explanations seem to boost people's informational fairness perceptions quite significantly. For trustworthiness, we don't see any statistically significant differences for consecutive conditions. However, for both our dependent variables, we see that perceptions increase from left to right, meaning they increase as we increase the amount of information that is being shown. On top of the pairwise comparisons, we fitted a structural equation model revealing a potential mediating role of informational fairness here. This means that as we increase the amount of information, that this might not necessarily directly increase people's perceptions of trustworthiness, but that people's perceptions of trustworthiness increase as their perceptions of informational fairness increase. From this chart, we can also see that people's AI literacy is positively related to their informational fairness perceptions, meaning that people with a higher AI literacy seem to perceive our system as more informationally fair as people with low AI literacy. We also qualitatively analyzed responses to open-ended questions, revealing interesting insights regarding people's requirements for explanations. The first theme that we identified was that many people get confused when different explanations are seemingly inconsistent with one another. An exemplary quote is that it seems odd that loan amount term is placed so low when it was one of the areas the individual could change to obtain the loan, pointing at the fact that this feature loan amount term was given as one of the counterfactual scenarios. However, its feature importance was apparently pretty low. This poses a challenge when operationalizing explanations, because when we construct explanations in an automated fashion, it's not easy to make sure that different explanations really are consistent with one another and not convey contradictory information. The second requirement is that many people seem to require an understanding of assumed monotonic relationships between features and outcome. For instance, one person said that we don't know if being married is a good or bad thing in this case. And yet again, this poses quite a significant challenge because as we employ nonlinear machine learning models, these types of monotonic relationships, they just don't necessarily exist. Thirdly, many people are put off when explanations involve seemingly unactionable features. And interestingly, we saw that whether people think that a given feature is actionable or unactionable differed quite significantly between people. To conclude, perhaps little surprisingly, perceptions of informational fairness increased as more information was provided. However, in our setup, perceptions of trustworthiness also increased. And this can be problematic if that means that systems designers can make people trust a system by just, casually speaking, throwing a lot of information at them. Hence, in follow-up work, we test how, or if at all, the correlation between informational fairness and trustworthiness changes when the system fairness is altered. We also found that people with high AI literacy perceived our system as more informationally fair as people with low AI literacy, which would have potentially implications for personalizing explanations for people with different backgrounds. As a note of caution, however, The given use case and the specific choice of scenario and explanations in our setup limit our ability to generalize findings. And our study would have to be replicated in other areas and with other explanations. With that, thank you very much for listening.